The Garden Report is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Hey, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to the Garden Report. On the last day of the Celtics season, they fall in Game 7, 103-94. Devastating loss. Somewhat tragic series of events tonight here. Jayson Tatum injured on the first play. Something Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown mentioned after. It was a bad injury, the left ankle turn on the first foul. Went to the line, split a pair of free throws, missed a layup shortly after that. And the Celtics did get out to a 7-2 lead early that had this crowd fired up, and it was a special crowd here. Front to bottom packed, at tip-off, everyone going nuts. Everybody cheering the Derek White introduction for obvious reasons, and Isaiah Thomas, Red Sox players in the house.
Yeah, man, a lot of great Celtics players. Then you also had the Red Sox players here as well.
So everything lined up, and we did a preview show, Josue. We said Celtics could get a blowout win, or the Heat could take this in crunch time, and the Heat got a blowout win. Celtics shoot 38%, 21 from three, their second worst shooting night of the season, faded more and more each quarter, put up a little bit of a fight in the third. But otherwise, it's just a relative no-show in a Game 7 with the season on the line. And this isn't the first time this has happened in these playoffs. Just a shocking way to end the year.
The Garden Report is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you go to FanDuel.com/Boston.
Yeah, I mean, but Bob, you have to give Miami a lot of credit too as well. I mean, they capitalize on that, and that's what they do, right? When they feel like the energy isn't being matched, or that they're, in terms of not as tight as the Celtics were, right? I think that's what Brogdon said after this one. You know, they just were very tight. They weren't as loose as the Miami Heat, whereas the Miami Heat were treating this just like any other playoff game throughout this series. And I think that carried on. You know, yeah, Jayson Tatum going down, and he never looked right this entire game. And you wonder how bad that ankle, how bad he hurt that ankle. But at the same time, you saw the Celtics team, the offense just really collapse. I know Jaylen Brown was trying to take the mantle and try to lead this team to an improbable win, especially when you have someone like Tatum, like, the way he went down, but he just didn't have it. I mean, the Miami Heat were all over him. You saw the turnovers after turnovers, and he converting over those turnovers, and then you apply the pressure on the Celtics, and they just completely folded. And what I mean by that is chucking up three-pointed shots, trying to go for home runs instead of going for the double. All the metaphors that we've been throughout the entire season just all came out in this one. And you can say the exact same about what they did in that second half, where the Miami Heat just doubled down on that like they have throughout this series in victories, right? When they come out of halftime with that same type of effort, and it's even doubled down more, and the Celtics just crumbled under that pressure. It felt like you saw no room for the Celtics to make that big comeback that they needed to make when they went down by 15.
Yeah, amazing to see. Team full of ball handlers, playmakers, versatile roster, look completely inept on the offensive end after Tatum went down. I understand the pivot to Brown. Go from your first best player to your second best player. Tatum looked like he was almost out there as a diversion, just 13 shots, not a ton of ball handling after the first quarter. He had that dribble off the foot, and it felt like that was the end of him as far as leading the offense went. And Brown melted down, and he took responsibility for it. Here's what he had to say about his terrible performance.
Jaylen, what happened out there tonight? It seemed like shots didn't go down early, then the defense slipped, and shots still didn't go down, and then turnovers. Just what happened personally? What happened with the team?
We failed. I failed. And we let the whole city down.
So a tough way across the board for quite a few guys who stood out individually this year. Tatum, first team All-NBA. Brown makes the second team, and Smart, great. White, all defense. White with the great moment that's now going to go down as a footnote on this playoff run.
See, everyone got too excited. You had to wait to see this team could finish things up, because it's still impressive. We'll always remember that play, but just couldn't get the job done. So all of a sudden, it doesn't really rank as high as those other, incredible moments in Boston sports history.
Yeah, so it'll be a Heat Nuggets finals. No Celtics in the finals. Almost seemed like a foregone conclusion that they would capitalize on this comeback here. Instead, they're just the fourth team to come back down 0-3 and lose that Game 7. The problem is, listen, if Tatum gets hurt on the first play, and the offense goes awry, but they're able to stay in it, and the defense is rolling, and different guys step up, and it goes down the wire, and Jimmy Butler and Bam just take this. You live with it, right? I think you look and say, all right, Game 7 went off the rails. You had no room for error, but you came back, you fought, you stayed together. As I said at the top here, this looked like Game 5 against Philly. This looked like Game 3 against Miami. Some of the lowest moments of the playoffs, it just had that vibe to it. And yes, they missed shots. Yes, like plays like that White travel inside where they almost cut it to 5. You look back on it and say, if that went a different way, maybe this game goes a different way. But you weren't even close here tonight. Falling to 90 points for the first time all year. The offense looks flat out dysfunctional, and the defense is still running around, leaving guys like Caleb Martin open. You wanted to see a better display than this, and this isn't the first time this has happened this year. This isn't the first time this team left you like, what's going on here? And a couple guys, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford said after this game, and we've been through a lot this year, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of things happened this year. And yes, the Ime Udoka suspension's a part of that. But you just wondered the inconsistency this year, and that is what I asked Al, and he didn't totally agree with it, but he did at least acknowledge that this was a difficult year, and he's got to take a step back and assess everything that happened here.
Yeah, which I think is worth mentioning for sure. I mean, I think we all agree with that, especially where we don't know what's going to happen with Jaylen's future and what the front office thinks about what happened. But I also think that what he meant by it is like, yeah, they weren't always consistent, but when their backs were against the wall, they responded. I mean, they didn't get the job done here. Obviously, they didn't, right? Miami Heat won Game 7, and it wasn't even close. But to be in this position, a lot of people didn't see that happening, right? A lot of people wondered if they're going to get out of that Philadelphia series, when they had their backs against the wall, coming back in that one. So I just think what Al Horford's trying to say overall is like, yeah, this team didn't reach its ultimate goal, but in times when people least expected them to come up big, they did. And yeah, again, they didn't get the job done. But I just feel like when the loss is that fresh, that's the last thing he wants to get into about consistency. But it's worth mentioning. I mean, it's been the story of this team. We're going to ask you those type of questions because that's been a huge problem with this team. And we're wondering, you rattled 3 wins in a row, like, where's that disconnect again? Where is that, what happened in this game that's happened so many times throughout the postseason and beyond that? Whether you want to call them the 500 Celtics or whatever, when they're this version of them, when they're that team that can't find what's wrong throughout the course of a game, you're wondering, well, where's that disconnect? And maybe you can pinpoint exactly where it is in this one. And Al Horford just, again, because of the heat of the moment, because of losing Game 7, he just didn't want to say that. He just wanted to keep things positive. And I get that because I think he is truly proud of these guys. I think no matter what happened, or whatever's going to happen in this Game 7, coming back in this series really did bring this team together. I generally believe that. So I think that's why Al is just trying to keep things positive. And if I had to guess, he's probably on the camp that wants to run things back for the most part, wants to see this team back and get another shot at it. The whole Joe Mazzulla thing, I'm not going to put words in Al's mouth or try to guess what he thinks about the situation. But it sounds like when he talks about the organization making the decision and assessing things after the dust settles, not tonight, right? Not right when emotions are high, that they will make the right decision. Again, I can't tell what he means by that in terms of Joe Mazzulla's future, but I think he trusts whatever the organization is going to do, that it's going to be the right thing.
Yeah, and we'll get into the offseason preview in our next video, rather. But the one thing that did, and I agree, the personalities on the team, I think the people in the room, I think the bonds between teammates here stayed strong throughout, at times, I think, a trying season, and they did bounce back. Because they stayed together in the worst spot.
Exactly. You can't pull this off if that was the case, right? If the narrative was true about, they pretend to like each other and that they're not really that, they don't win 3 games in a row against this Miami Heat team. They're too mentally tough for that, right? So I think the Celtics did rally, and they were finally on the same page, and I think it did bring them together, especially after what happened in Game 6.
Yeah, but they didn't learn from miscues throughout the year, from letdowns, from their problems. At times throughout the year, they didn't even address their problems, acknowledge them. And they festered, and as Al also said in a great presser, check it out on CLNS Media, they try to address things as early as the Atlanta series, and that I think was his most kind of stinging commentary on the playoffs, is that they didn't respond or address or fix those things.
Right.
And
They put a Band-Aid on it. What it was, yeah.
Or they just moved past it. I think a lot of times that was their approach.
Yeah.
We lost tonight, move on.
And they got a false sense of who they were because of what happened in Game 6. I mean, that's the best example, right? But things like that where, like, one thing could have gone the other way. Like, if Duncan Robinson makes one of those three-pointers, you're not even in position to win this game, right? If the way Marcus Smart missed that, you know, how quickly he took that three-point shot, Derek White doesn't have enough time for the putback. Like, I don't think they fully grasped like how fortunate they were to be in the situation that they were going to have to bring their A game to another level because the Miami Heat were pissed off, quite frankly, right? They don't want to go this far, and they think that they got robbed in Game 6, and they certainly made sure that, you know, they took every play as if it was the very last play of the game throughout a Game 7, which is what you're supposed to do, and the Celtics just never did that, in my opinion.
Add the crunch time issues to the list. -12 net rating in crunch time in these playoffs, and they stole a win on a 0.2 putback, but they come out the following night. We all said none of it means anything. It means very little if they don't finish in Game 7, and the Celtics didn't come close tonight. A disappointing night. Could have been a classic night here at TD Garden. It had all the makings for it, and this team, as they did for a lot of the year, let down in this huge moment here, and almost a fitting end to this group that captivated and drew you in, but ultimately didn't seem to have enough to win a championship. And why was that? That's the answer we're going to get next here over the next couple of weeks into the offseason. We're going to see what this team really thinks was the core issue this year, or whether they even think there's an issue at all. I don't think it would shock anybody if they run this whole thing back and say we had a great year. That was a lot of the sentiment tonight, but we'll see. Josue, Pavon, Bobby Manning, the Celtics eliminated here at TD Garden tonight in Game 7. The Heat are East Conference champions. They're moving on to the NBA Finals, and Celtics move on to the offseason. So will we here. CLNS Media, Celtics All Access for all the reaction. We'll get into some of those big questions ahead for the Celtics in our next video here.
CLNS Media's Celtics coverage is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win.